Okay, now we're going to take a look at parental investment again, and we're focusing here on some of the trade-offs that we see and some of the strategies that have evolved, the different kinds of strategies that have evolved as a result of different ecologies and different environments and different life history traits, if you will. So here's an example of two different strategies that have evolved. Some animals are Iteroparis and some are Semoparis. Semoparity is when an animal reproduces just one time in his or her life and then dies. So it's in the live fast, die young strategy. We sometimes call this suicidal reproduction because the individual breeds and then dies. And typically in a Semoparis animal, the animal puts in a massive reproductive effort once and often produces a lot of offspring, but only one time, and then it dies. Lots and lots of animals fall in this category. Insects and fishes are among those for sure. Think about salmon, for example. They spend their whole lives kind of growing and essentially getting ready to reproduce, and then they engage in one massive spawning event, and boom, they die. That's the end. This is a strategy that works for organisms that, especially organisms that have very short lives, like low life expectancies. They live in unpredictable environments. So the best strategy is to grow up fast, reproduce with one big bang, and then be done. Other animals have evolved the Iteroparis strategy. Animals that breed sequentially over a lifetime. They breed more than once throughout their lives. These animals have a longer, slower life strategy, if you will. And they're less likely to be self-sacrificing for a particular litter. So let's say an animal has a litter of young and is in a bad condition. The environment changes, there's a drought or a famine or something happens, and it's a bad situation. Iteroparis animals may abandon a whole litter. They may abandon a reproductive effort, in part because they might have a chance in the future to breed again. And so Iteroparis animals are essentially strategizing about breeding now and raising young now versus raising young later. So there's a trade-off. Take care of my infant or take care of my young now, but I need to take care of myself so that I can breed again in the future. I'm going to give you an example of animals that fall in this category. Well, you can think of lots and lots of them, right? Birds and mammals, for example, usually fall in this category. Yellow baboons fall into this category for sure. Jane Altman studied them extensively. They're Iteroparis, and you'll see this long, slow life with our baboons. They grow up slowly. Females mature after 4 or 5 years. They have one infant every 2 to 3 years until they get into their 20s. So we see a slow reproduction over many years. Iteroparis animals tend to invest less per reproductive event than our Semoparis animals, so they have fewer offspring per event typically, and that makes sense, right? Baboons are kind of cool because we can think of them and lots of other animals as being dual career mothers, right? So you've got these mothers that are making a living. They're feeding, they're walking around, they're avoiding predation, they're finding shelter, but they're also caring for their young. That's hard work for baboons who spend, 2 or 3 years with a young, nursing a young before they get pregnant again. So they spend 70% of their day is occupied just making a living. They are busy animals, and they're doing their best, probably not being able to breed any faster than that. Another choice that is has evolved into different strategies is how many offspring to have. Invest in a single offspring or in multiple young. So there's this trade-off between quality and quantity, if you will. Many animals simply produce lots and lots of offspring, right? So the three-spine sticklebite that I studied, females would, we think they are Semoparis. So they breed once and then die, or breed over one season, I guess I should say, and then die. So the females develop this big belly filled with eggs, and they lay those eggs in the nest of a male. Then they might develop another clutch of eggs during that same breeding season. Maybe they'll develop 3 during a breeding season, but each time they produce 100 or 200 eggs. And these animals that produce many eggs or many young tend to live in environments that are unpredictable, where life expectancies are low. Most of these eggs are going to develop into little tiny fish that die, right? Maybe even the embryo doesn't even survive, or it's eaten by a predator. Or maybe the young fish are eaten by predators. Maybe 90% of them or 99% of them are killed by predators or by disease. So insects, fishes, some birds have many young, although birds tend to have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 offspring and not 200, right? Mammals are the same way. Many mammals have multiple young per litter, right? Think of your dog. Or cats, or lots and lots of other mammals. Again, there's this trade-off, right? Primates are interesting because very few primates have multiple young. Most primates have single, one offspring at a time. And the question is, why are they different than other mammals? Right? What kind of animals have single young per reproductive effort? Lots of mammals do. A few birds. Mammals that are large herbivores, think elephants or moose, tend to have 1 or possibly 2 young. And primates fall into this category for sure. And this strategy seems to work in animals that have long, slow lives with high long life expectancies, living in relatively predictable places. So primates fall into that category for sure. Why aren't there more multiples in primates? So let's take a look at some of the data first. So we've got a few primates listed here. Humans have, let's say, without our assisted reproductive technology, these are the rates of twinning in humans. So monozygotic or identical twins less than 1% of the time, dizygotic twins about 1% of the time, and higher order multiples very rare. Chimpanzees have a little bit more, quite a bit higher twinning rates, but still really low. Gorillas and orangs, they rarely have twins and they rarely survive. So all of these primates have very low rates of twinning. Tamarin monkeys and marmosets actually are exceptions to this. Tamarin monkeys and marmosets often have twins and sometimes triplets. Tamarins are interesting. They live in unrelated groups, small unrelated groups, but there's only one breeding pair, so they have a lot of what's called alloparenting. Alloparenting means that others, or cooperative breeding, others are helping, particularly males. And in tamarins, the females give birth to a set of twins about twice per year. So they tend to have twins a lot more commonly. They're also a little bit more likely to abandon babies. They have what we might call conditional commitment to their young. Why is there the difference? Why the difference? Probably because, well, it could be a couple of things. Oh, look at that cute chimp. It could be because of our evolutionary history. We see where the New World monkeys, this is a phylogeny, you can see the relationship, the evolutionary relationships between organisms here. Humans are most closely related to chimpanzees and bonobos. We share a recent common ancestor with them, not that recent, like 6 million years ago. But these animals here, the apes, the great apes, are all clustered together on this phylogeny, and there's very few twins in this grouping. The New World monkeys share an ancestor with Old World monkeys and the great apes much farther back in time. So phylogenetically, they're farther away from the other group of primates, and simply it might be their social structure, where they've got a lot more alloparenting. Why can't orangs and gorillas and humans have twins more often? It's simply just too hard to care. We find that the survival rate of twins is compromised, and their mothers is compromised. So let's take a look at humans and multiple births. Let's think about that. How successful are we at caring for twins and multiple births? Well, apparently our twinning rate is about 1.1% in humans. That is prior to assisted reproductive technology. Some societies have much higher rates of twinning. I want to talk about the Yoruba of southwest Nigeria, some group of people who have twinning rates that are about 5%, 5% twinning rates. So that's rather interesting. Here's a picture of why we don't have higher order multiples very much, at least why we shouldn't, right? So these are two pictures of me at the same stage of my pregnancy for two pregnancies. In one of these, I'm gestating with triplets. The other is a singleton. And you can see perhaps the difference. Gestating twins or triplets or other higher order multiples is very demanding, energetically, and it's physically demanding, and it probably wasn't selected for because of that. Okay. The Yoruba of Nigeria have this much higher rate of twinning, and it's kind of interesting for anthropologists to ask the question, well, what is the perception of twins in this culture and in other cultures? It's kind of interesting to ask that question. It turns out that the Yoruba of Nigeria, prior to the mid-1700s, thought twins were fearful. They didn't want to have twins. They rejected them or even sacrificed them some. But in today's world, and there was a switch in their culture around the mid-18th century. And today, in today's world, twins are welcomed. It's a time of rejoicing or celebration when twins are born. And the perception is that twins can bring great joy and happiness or much disaster. And mortality rates are still high, and are particularly high here in Nigeria. And that's probably because there's less postnatal care and less prenatal care than in other parts of the world. What about other cultures? What are the response to twins in other cultures? Is infanticide more likely if a female gives birth to twins? First of all, whoa, wait a minute. Infanticide in humans? Do humans kill infants? Sometimes. We're going to talk about that later. It's covered in our Mother Nature text in chapters 12 through 14. Check it out. But are twins more likely to be killed than others? Well, that's a question worth asking. Culturally, twinning and in traditional cultures, twins are perceived in different ways. So the Kejim of Cameroon view twins as a joyful event that brings good fortune. The Banyora of Uganda rejoice with twins, but they're a little more ambivalent, recognizing twins could be a danger. The Bantu believe that twins are a misfortune. It's a misfortune to have twins. They're like wild animals. They're deceitful. They bring disruption to society. They're feared, etc. And so we get these wide range of cultural responses to twins. Some researchers believe that twins are more subject to infanticide just because they're twins. Say in cultures where twins are thought of as a big misfortune, you might expect them to be at higher risk for infanticide, right? Researchers have looked into this. Ball and Hill looked at a whole suite of traditional societies from all over the globe, and they looked at the causes of infanticide. And it sounds kind of foreign to you probably to think about infanticide in humans. We'll talk more about this. But lower viability is a common cause across almost all cultures. Yeah, twins are born young, they're born early, they're probably weak, they might be deformed. They're certainly not, the mom probably doesn't have enough resources to take care of them because she herself has had her resources depleted, right, over this twin pregnancy. So lower viability is a big reason for infanticide. What about just the fact that they're twins? Some cultures report, or some researchers report, that in a variety of traditional cultures, the ones here represent a reported cause of infanticide is twinning, or are twins. In the end, the researchers suggested that twins themselves don't typically result in a higher rate of infanticide. It's simply they fall into the category of lower viability because they are lower birth weight. They may have other disabilities that singletons don't have. Okay. All right, we'll move on to this in the next video.